Hello, today is September 14, 2021, and the time is 2:21 p.m. This video is partly inspired by something that's been nagging at me, especially the past couple of days, and off and on over the years. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. A lot of people, and I understand the friendly advice that I need to put behind me the events that took place in Calgary that began really in 2012 and onward, and I should just put it all behind me and move on. And I've discussed in videos and showed evidence of the injuries that I sustained on May 4th, 2013, that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life with no compensation, as well as the wrongful conviction leading to this criminal record now that I have for allegedly obstruction and alleged assaulting a police officer and being convicted despite the evidence that I'm innocent, and the great lengths that they went to convict me, which includes tampering with trial transcripts. I talked about this, showed evidence of this, independent evidence. So it's not just me saying this. But there's a few other things that are going to be haunting me, that still haunt me, and going to haunt me for a long time, probably for the rest of my life. And these are alleged bills that I owe from the events in Calgary. And apparently, Alberta Legal Aid expects me to repay them. And I will say right now, even if I had the money, I'm not paying a penny. Ever. As the fourth lawyer told me, they, City of Calgary, took their pound of flesh of me, and I should just lick my wounds and carry on. Well, I didn't owe the pound of flesh. So they owe me that pound of flesh plus a pound of flesh of their own. And as far as I'm concerned, the City of Calgary, Alberta, owes me everything because they took everything from me, knowing that I'm innocent. So I have a lot of things that I'm still dealing with. And there's also some medical stuff outstanding. Again, if I had the money, I wouldn't pay a cent. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say it again. The province of Alberta, because of the City of Calgary, owes me everything. And I'm going to stand firm on that. I went up against all odds. And I've said in videos before, I stood alone against many. And that has taken a toll on me mentally, because too much by too many for too long will negatively impact even the strongest character. And I've shared in videos where it's impacted me emotionally. I don't like sharing that kind of stuff because it's very personal, but I have to show that there's a human side to, for example, injustice. And there's videos about how my whole story, and I'm going to leave a few links in the description box, as well as a link to my Facebook group and to what's called a featured post, where you can read in more detail the timeline of events. I stood alone against all odds. And I didn't want to be that guy. And apparently I was the first person in the history of Calgary to go the distance. And I've had many people tell me I did the right thing, not just trying to whistleblow and expose, for example, the sexual abuse of vulnerable women, or the sex trafficking, whatever you want to call it. But I did the right thing when I defended myself, and I kept fighting. And they had to lie, cheat, and steal to convict me. And I'm still carrying the burden and many burdens from all that. Is that fair? So this kind of segues into, don't be afraid. I'm telling you, don't be afraid of anyone or anything. Show no fear, be not afraid, but be respectful. There's a difference there. Respect all, fear none.
I'm adding this bonus part to prove a point. This video does not state or imply what others should say, think, or do. Just sharing information for whatever it's worth. Whatever someone decides is totally on them. When giving testimony when the police are involved, what needs to be established by the Crown Prosecutor is you're identifying them as police, peace officers, or authority to you. For example, if you do, then the standard imposed is greater because you identify them as authority. However, if you don't, then it changes the proceedings, regardless of criminal or lawsuits. This is why the Crown Prosecutor always asks if they were wearing a uniform, were the police lights on, etc. How you decide to deal with this knowledge is totally on you. The said could translate to the assumption when interacting with a police peace officer, his or her status. Thus, a counter to such assumption being to establish the interaction being in their personal capacity. So does this sound like a free man on the land argument, or using established law to protect oneself, rhetorically asked? It appears to be a gray area, not openly discussed by those in law. The rub is this. As a free man on the land type would argue not consenting to contract with authority, the police and courts reserve the same right not to contract with freemen on the land nonsense. The difference being the support of the population and dealing with those who have the monopoly on violence. The corporate veil or variant of can be used to prevent such professionals being personally liable, but no, there are always ways to circumvent this, such as but not limited to a criminal act, something the governing body, such as a city's insurance, won't cover them, and this begins political interference. My point being, to give an example of a tidbit of truth with the free men on the land nonsense. Again, I'm not advocating for or even against this particular movement.
There's a lot of fear going on in the world on all sorts of topics, even to being, for example, politically correct, saying the right thing. Don't be afraid. That's the worst thing you can do. And with worldwide current events now, people are afraid of all sorts of stuff. So don't be afraid to stand up, for example, to tyranny, to injustice. If more people did that, and I'm not patting myself on the back or expecting anything from any comments or anything, but if more people did what I did, the world would be a different place. Tyranny and all these things are possible because no one does anything, because they're fearful, especially fearful with those who have the monopoly on violence. So don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid with current worldwide events, for example. And I've said in videos that what we're experiencing today is not unique for today. There's a pattern within the cycles of civilization that goes back every 100 years. And right now, at this stage, in this pattern, we have another year and a half to endure. And based on history, what follows is Great Depression. Economically, everything. And during all this time, many people, I'm trying to think of how to put this subtly, they're not going to make it. Just like we see in this pattern every 100 years. So we have the Great Depression, then we have the Great War, World Wars. Then we have a time of prosperity. And what people are really afraid of is a time before a new equilibrium is established. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid. What's there to be afraid of, really? Afraid of the unknown? Now, I'm going to just mention here, I see this a lot with people, for example, in different religions, especially New Ager types, Christians. I'm not picking on Christians. And just people in general, talking about fear being a bad thing, and even anger. But you have to remember, and I'm going to use this as a descriptive, so it kind of applies to everyone can relate, that all your emotions, love, hate, fear, joy, all these different emotions that we have, they're all, as a descriptive, programmed into us. And these emotions are tools to help us survive life. The key is not to be consumed by any emotions. You can be consumed with love, lust. Both will cloud perceptions. Both, for example, will inhibit vetting someone properly, a potential mate. And as we all know, when you're consumed by fear or even anger, it can have some very bad consequences. A lot of people forget, for example, fear will heighten your senses, make you more alert if you're not consumed by it. Anger will keep you focused on an objective, for example. Now, depending on what your objective is, if it's good or bad, then, could have positive or negative consequences. But anger, fear, love, hate, all these things, they're all part of our psychological programming to help us survive life, this world. So the problem, I want to emphasize this, is when people become consumed by any emotion, especially the topic here being fear. Don't fear. Don't fear other people dressed in costumes or having a title or whatever. They're just people. People who have others of their like mind to fall back onto. But if there's injustice, whether it ties into the topics that I talk about specifically or current worldwide events, don't be afraid. Because you have to remember, there are human beings on the other end who are just as afraid, or whatever emotions that they're experiencing with whatever they're imposing or trying to impose. And they're also afraid of consequences harming them by their own hand. And they could even be angry because they don't like when people, especially people that they think are lesser than them, standing up to them. It's like that bully in school. Bullies everybody. And then finally one kid turns around, punches the bully. I'm not advocating violence, I'm just using this as an example. And then the bully stops. And then the bully cries that he was hit or she was hit. Really, when you think about it, even as an adult, no matter how old you are, we're really all just children with more life experience. Anyway, I just want to share what I shared. Take from it what you will, and hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.